City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
Good evening. I call to order the City Council meeting of May the 18th for the City of Northglenn. Lisa, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Dodge will be absent. Mayor Pro Tem Escobar.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers.
Here.
Councilmember Leidy.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown will be absent. Councilmember Whitman will be absent. Councilmember Duran-Mullica. Here. Councilmember Wilford.
Here.
And for the record, today is May 14th.
Yes, May 14th.
What did I say?
May 18th. No, 2018.
It's written on my screen, May the 14th. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is a sign.
I invite you all to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Hayes, any responses to citizen inquiries?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, council, any additions or deletions from the agenda?
I would like to add on the discussion items, the evaluation committee. Evaluation committee.
Anything else? Okay, we have two proclamations. I will come down for them and Chief Hayes May to come forward. Here. No. You got to be on record here, Chief.
Just make sure
Proclamation, whereas the President of the United States, Congress, and the General Assembly of the State of Colorado has designated May the 15th as National Police Officers Memorial Day and the week of May the 13th through the 19th as National Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And whereas during Law Enforcement Memorial Week, and in particular on Peace Officers Memorial Day, we will honor those officers who made the ultimate sacrifice while performing their sworn duty. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 23,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have been killed in the line of duty. And whereas in 2017, 135 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty in the United States, including Deputy Sheriff Zacharias Perlock Parrish III of Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and in 2018, El Paso County Deputy Micah Flick, and our own Adams County Deputy Heath Gum. And whereas the City of Northglenn tragically lost one of their own, Corporal Edgar E.B. Raines Jr., who was killed in the line of duty 34 years ago on the 30th of May, 1984, in honor of Corporal Raines and other fallen officers. A candlelight vigil will be held at E.B. Raines Jr. Memorial Park on Thursday, May the 17th, 2018. And whereas it is fitting and appropriate for all citizens to join together in commemorating police officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their community, helping to preserve the rights and security of all citizens. Now, therefore, I, Antonio B. Escobar, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim May the 13th through the 19th, 2018 as National Law Enforcement Memorial Week in the City of Northglenn, and call upon all citizens to observe this week with appropriate ceremonies and observances. I further proclaim May the 15th, 2018 National Peace Officers Memorial Day in the City of Northglenn in the honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 14th day of May 2018, Antonio B. Escobar, Mayor Pro Tem. Chief May?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I would also like to invite our community. This Thursday night will be our candlelight vigil. And actually this year we're co-hosting it with Adams County Sheriff's Department. Earlier this year they lost one of their deputies, Heath Gum, and I'd love to see our community come out and support the Adams County Sheriff's Office and the families of Heath Gum, and actually Edgar B. Raines, his family is going to be there as well. So I hope to see everybody there. Thank you.
Parking?
Parking will be around the Justice Center. If you just are at, see, I'm already talking Justice Center.
Justice Center.
Around City Hall. I'm not quite there at the Justice Center yet. On the west side of the building. And then just walk over to the lake and you will see everybody gathered there.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Congratulations. Margaret? Deb Lawson.
I didn't know I went by Margaret, but okay. Just call me for dinner, sir. I'll be fine.
I want to go before the camera.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You called me Margaret. Maybe it's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Kids to Park Day proclamation. This is a hard one. I rehearsed this several times. Whereas June the 2nd, 2018 is the 8th Kids to Park Day organization and launched by the National Park Trust. And whereas Kids to Park Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. And whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks. And whereas we should encourage citizens to lead a more active lifestyle to combat issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. And whereas Kids to Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants and will broaden the children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors. And whereas the City of Northglenn will celebrate Kids to Parks Day on Saturday, June the 2nd during Derby Day event at E.B. Raines Jr. Memorial Park. I therefore, Antonio B. Escobar, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Northglenn, do hereby proclaim to participate in Kids to Park Day. I urge residents of Northglenn to make time on June the 2nd, 2018 to take their children in their lives to the neighborhood state or national parks. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 14th day of May, 2018, Antonio B. Escobar, Mayor Pro Tem. Deb?
Thank you. We're real excited to be partnering with the Derby Day, and we have a captive audience, and we'll be out there from 8 until probably 2 o'clock, and I'll have a special guest who is pretty furry, and his name is Buddy. He'll be out there, and you'll have to come out and see what Buddy's all about. Right, Miss Downing?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, presentations. Economic development update. Debbie?
Good evening, City Council. I'm Debbie Tuttle, Economic Development Manager and the NERA Executive Director. In front of you, you've got our 2017 ED review, year-end review. So I was going to go over a little bit of those statistics with you. Last year, we had almost 131,000 square feet of retail, office, industrial space absorbed, 328 new jobs that we reported, and then 79 new businesses that opened. If you look at those numbers, it's interesting because we always talk about how we're an entrepreneurial city of small businesses. And if you look at that, there was 48 storefronts and 31 home-based, almost the exact same. The average age, of course, is 34. That's something that we are promoting in our economic development efforts, that we are attracting the millennials and the young people to our community, and that definitely is in the demographics as we speak. We retained business retention calls. We go out on those and meet with our existing businesses, and we did 89 last year. And just a few things that I'll point out on the statistics here. Of course, our two big deals last year were the Marketplace with Hutensky Capital Partners, which will, with their acquisition, will be $76.7 million, as well as the Huron Center getting that done, which was over $10 million just on the exterior, and that did not include any of the Save-A-Lot or the Arby's interior and building of that. It was mainly all of the infrastructure that needed to be put in. So those were our two big deals last year. If you look on there, our sales tax history, we stayed pretty static, almost the same as last year, just inched up a little bit there. But again, with Marketplace being so down, with the almost 50% vacant, that's good that, again, that we're staying where we were. We're not losing sales tax. So that just indicates that our other areas like Webster Lake Promenade, and as well as the Garland Center and all of our other areas are doing very well. If you look at the commercial building permits, we did go up to 35 million. Again, a lot of that was to do with Huron Center and a lot of other projects that we had. Unemployment stayed about static. In the Northglenn Urban Renewal Authority, we issued 25 business grants. That's both exterior improvements as well as our utility upgrade, as well as incentives, totaling $13.2 million. The majority of that was $8 million for the Marketplace, and we leveraged over $40 million in actual investment from all the different businesses that we worked with. Since 1995, I mentioned this the other night when we were meeting with NERA, NERA has invested $41.4 million back into the community. Good news, Northglenn Green sold for $4.94 million, so that's where the Colorado University, Christian University used to be. That building was more than 60% vacant at the time, which was really bumping up our vacancy rates in office. It was at 11. It's now down to 3 just because of that. They're taking, so Ramus Law is taking the entire top floor. They're going to be hiring 50 new people. They should be done this fall, and they're going to be doing, because they're purchasing it, they're going to be doing not only interior improvements for their space, but also for the entire building, both exterior and interior. So that is a really good asset for the city of Northglenn because, again, that we had lost senior hub there, we had lost the university there, and again, we were almost empty, more than 60% empty. We had over 6 ribbon cuttings, and as you probably can see, we are doing quarterly reports now instead of monthly economic development reports, so again, this is for Q1. And we had 10 new storefronts, 9 of which were, and another 9 that were home-based. So again, that just kind of shows you what our pattern has been. Announcing 49 new jobs and 19,000 square feet. Our commercial real estate office, again, we were at 11.6% vacant, and now we're at 3.1. Our industrial is less than 1% again. There's just no industrial in Northglenn available. And retail has stayed static at 7.4. I did include some housing comparisons in there for council. And if you look at quarter one, again, January through March 31st, there were 77 homes on the market, and the median price was $325,000. So a lot of times people are asking, what is the housing cost? This kind of shows you that. If you look at the other chart, as of March 31st, so the end of quarter one, there were 11 homes on the market in Northglenn. The median was $355,000, but look at the span there. They were from $310,000 to $525,000. That's the median. If you look at all the comparisons with all the other cities, of course, we're the lowest in all of those, including average days on the market is only 7. People are buying here in Northglenn. You can review the list of past events and the future events. Encourage you to come to those. And the first quarter, we did 10 business retention and expansion visits. The NERA resolutions you'll see there, we did 3 new business grants. There was a couple amendments to existing grants that we already had, but 3 of those were new grants. Do you have any questions for me? There's a lot in there, and I'll let you kind of go through that, but you may have some questions.
Any questions?
No? Okay.
I do, Debbie.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're amazing,
Thank
Debbie.
you.
Thank you.
Much.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Business Retention and Expansion Committee, who they are and what they do?
Sure. There's about 5 staff people from different departments, from planning, 2 people from communications. We also have Wayne Dodge on there, as well as Councilman Whitman on there as the business liaisons. And we actually go out and we identify businesses, and of course our staff, our ED staff. So there's usually around 10. If we need additional people in there, depending on the business retention visits that we're doing, we'll call in outside agencies. So if it's something to do with, for instance, Adams County, it might be a primary employer, we would call in ACED to come there. If it's something to do with the Small Business Development Center, that they may need some extra help from the Small Business Development Center, we would ask somebody from them to come. If we had issues about, or questions about taxes here in Northglenn, we would ask somebody from the tax department to come. So again, we try to bring in the right people to the actual visits. And we meet monthly. We have different goals that we have set, and those are available if you'd like to see those. The majority of the big stuff that they work on is identifying what the problems are in the business community, how we can help with those. We do a business survey, which we just closed on Friday, so we identify what is going on in the business community, trying to see trends that are going on. We review all of those survey results. If there's some in there that we think one might be expanding, they're going to be ones that we're going to be doing a business retention call on. If there's some that we see, and one of the questions is, are you going to be declining? Will definitely be at their front door as well. The big best business breakfast that we do, they're involved in planning that entire thing. And then all of our lunch and learns, they're involved in actually coordinating those as well as other things.
One more question, if I can.
Yes.
The IHOP and the On the Dollar. When I go by the marketplace, both of those places seem to be very low traffic. How are they actually doing?
IHOP, I know, is doing very well. In fact, they're the busiest in Colorado. And what I've been told by the owner, they're the busiest of his franchisees, because he has some in other states. So IHOP is doing very, very well. On the Dollar definitely is looking for foot traffic, and of course with the redevelopment of the center, that's what will help him and his business. We have met with him 3 times in business retention visits, and we've actually gone out and like Councilmember Whitman came out on one of them because she has a lot of marketing expertise. So we talked about how to use Facebook, how to use social media, what do we need, what other things could you do to bring in more business. So we've met with him 3 times just in this quarter. So again, we need foot traffic over there. That's going to be the thing that helps all of those businesses, not just On the Dollar.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public invited to be heard, 5 minutes per speaker. Statements shall be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Is there anybody here who would like to be heard? Going once, going twice, seeing none.
No.
We will move on to the Legislative Policy Committee. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We just had one update. We did have a meeting tonight, and I think it was a real good discussion with Mr. Wilson and kind of summarizing where the session ended. We're targeting your second meeting in June to have him come and do his report formally to the council. And we actually started working on the legislative policy document for 2019 tonight. So really just coming up with some headings, if you will, and then Mr. Wilson and I will start to fill in the blanks. Anticipating a study session in July. And hopefully adoption of that policy sometime in August. The big thing I wanted to kind of throw out there is a couple of save the dates. And I know we've got a few council members not here tonight, so I'll make sure and follow up in an email as well. But if you could look at August 28th or 29th, and you don't have to answer me now, we can talk about this in the future, but we're looking at one of those two dates for the legislative dinner for 2019. And we decided we wanted to do it a little earlier, wanted to make sure that was okay with the balance of council tonight, but reason is when people are starting to get into campaigns in September and October, it might be hard to get people to turn out. So barring any objections, if those dates are okay, if you could look at your calendars and get back to me. And I would defer to the committee to see if they have anything to add.
Not at this time, thank you.
So I'm wondering with the elections, though, we would have, depending on who is elected or retained, I mean, you wouldn't have some of the new people. So that, for me, I'm just wondering if that's a good change. Usually it's closer to, yeah. So.
It's a good point. I know last year we did it in November, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And so we would only be inviting the sitting representatives and senators. We do cast a wide net and invite basically anyone kind of north of I-70. Once we have the policy statement adopted, we would, of course, distribute it to the new legislators. I think our challenge was that, and I defer to the committee on this too, is that if we wait till November, December, a lot of them are already in the throes of their committee assignments and starting to draft their bills, and we'd want to get in front of them earlier. So, but that was just kind of what we talked about as a committee.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. I'm just concerned that, maybe some are term limited or maybe are not electing to move forward with it, and you wouldn't have maybe the turnout, or maybe you would have a turnout, but then you wouldn't have those same people sitting in the seats and hearing what you're asking. So I'm just curious. I mean, and for us, we only do it once a year, and actually, in my mind, we should probably reach out more often, than less.
So I certainly agree. The date that was presented to us initially was just right before the election. And we were really concerned that any of the individuals who are already elected are all going to have elections on their hands, and it was probably unlikely that we were going to have people coming in and able to join us just a few days before an election. One thing that we hadn't necessarily explored is whether or not, we want to invite candidates of both parties to that dinner, and that way we're casting a wide net and knowing, we don't know how the election is going to go, and so, does that help? But we looked at pushing it closer to August, hoping that we would be able to get more legislators to join us, because from my understanding in the past, we've invited most folks who are in Adams County and up the I-70 corridor.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not an advocate, to look at all the candidates that are running.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It could be a very large dinner.
Truly, and you really can't get anything done that way. On the other hand, I'm just concerned that it's a bit too early, is my concern, so.
The other thing we could do is, look at the time directly after the election. My only concern with that is that for many of the folks coming in, orientations take up a lot of time after they're elected. And the holidays are always so busy anyway that I don't know that we'd be able to find a good time then either. But I think that we're, as a committee, very open to exploring different times, which is why you were seeing this one in front of you today. But I completely agree. Maybe we should look at doing a dinner twice a year, as opposed to only seeing the folks who represent us one time a year. So maybe that's something that we could also look at, Jim, is maybe trying to do something more regularly.
Yeah, I'm your staff support, so whatever you decide, I'll implement.
Anybody else? Okay. Did you want some different direction? We're missing 3 folks.
No, I would just say look at those 2 dates, and I'll send something out, probably my Friday report, just to prompt you. And then if you have a conflict with either August 28th or 29th, please let us know, and we'll try to avoid that date. And I worked with Ms. Small to identify if there were any election-related conflicts. She did not find any. Of course, there could be debates at that point, but we didn't find any of those posted yet either. But we thought the last week of August was conflict-free at this point.
I just have one more comment. Then if you're going to be sending it out in your report on Friday, the reports are a bit busy, and so it's easy to miss some of those dates. So maybe it would be a separate email, because this would be an important date to look at.
Yeah, I'll include it in the body of the email for sure, as opposed to buried in the documents that are attached.
It's easy to lose a lot of information.
Okay. So, financial report. Mr. Loveland?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman. Let's see. There's pictures today.
Oh.
So, yeah. I knew you guys would be excited. We only do it quarterly, so hang on. All right. So this is through March 31st of 2018. I'm going to start with the sales and use tax update. Year-to-date collections are at $3.2 million, and that's an increase of about 8% over the prior year. If you remember, last year at this time, we were down 7%. So if you really look over a couple of years, we're basically flat through the first quarter. It's really hard to tell. We only have January and February collections as of this report. And last year, while we were down about 7%, we ended the year up over 2.5%. So time will tell. Nothing, if you look at page 10 of the regular monthly detailed report, as far as our geographic areas, two to note, Malian City Center, which is Webster Lake through Boondocks area, is down a little bit. But even those, while they're down about $10,000 in total. So sales and use tax is performing pretty well through the first quarter, and specifically the first 2 months of the year. In the general fund, total revenues are at $4.6 million. You'll notice on the taxes line in the monthly financial report, that's up about 12%. We were expecting that with the property tax increases that we saw. Those are up about 30% for the assessed valuation, so we're seeing that already as those tax payments come in. Other areas of revenue are in line with the prior year and in line with what we budgeted. We kind of kept most of the things flat. Taxes tend to drive what we do here. So most of the other revenues, like I said, were steady. And then the collection rate on the far right of 17%, that's actually in line almost exactly to the prior year. On the expenditure side of things, a total budget of $24.2 million. Year-to-date actuals just over $5 million. Again, that accounts for 21% of the expenditures. Again, in line with what we've budgeted. Nothing to draw attention to through the first quarter in the general fund expenditures. You'll see the net change in fund balance, the budget line of $383,000. You'll hear a first reading coming in a few minutes. That we'll be making amendments to the budget, as soon as I present it today. In 20 minutes, we'll talk about making changes to it. So all these numbers kind of fluctuate on a monthly basis. So is there any questions on sales tax or the general fund specifically? pretty early in the year. Okay. On the Conservation Trust Fund, again, these are lottery proceeds, which we expect to be extended, as you may be aware. Total revenue in that fund is $90,000 and expenditures of $8,900. The major project that's budgeted for that is the Northwest Open Space Project, and that's kind of getting its legs and getting off the ground as we speak. In the Capital Projects Fund, kind of our large major projects are accounted for in this fund. You'll see the total budget of $19.6 million. Most of that is the Justice Center. Total revenues in the Capital Projects Fund is $1.1 million and expenditures of $1.2 million. This fund, revenue specifically, the timing will change, varies on grants and whatnot, but the collection rate of just under 20% is consistent with what we would expect. And then expenditures fluctuate based on the speed of the projects and when we're making payments on those. In the Water and Wastewater Fund, total revenues are at $2.2 million and total expenditures of $2.7 million. You'll notice in the expenditure line, the capital outlay, if you compare it to the prior year, is down a couple $1 million, and that's due to the Headworks project in the prior year. It's now complete, and so we're moving on from that project, and so you'll see some fluctuation in the total spending. On the operational side of throings, personnel and purchase services, those expenditures are all within budget and what we'd expect for through this part of the year. And then the Stormwater Fund, total revenues of just over $82,000 and expenditures of $59,000. And then lastly, the Sanitation Fund, where revenues are at $361,000 and expenditures of $282,000 for a change in fund balance of $78,000. Overall, the general fund revenues in total is up 8%, which again is largely driven to that property tax number this early in the year. Other revenues are aligning for the most part within all of the funds. Total, wanted to just highlight our cash reserves real quick. Those are at $60.7 million through March. And then I can take questions on anything either on the presentation part or in the detailed financial report that you receive monthly.
Any questions for Mr. Loveland?
Nope.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Consent agenda.
To approve? Second.
You said you open the vote?
Vote is open. The vote is closed and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
We've added, we didn't remove from the consent agenda, we added to the consent agenda. I'm sorry.
To discussion.
No. It was to the agenda additions and deletions that we added your evaluation process. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Down into discussion items. 2 discussion items?
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have nothing for items removed from the consent agenda. There were none. Ordinances, CB 1905. Lisa, would you read the title?
CB 1905, a bill for a special ordinance amending the 2018 budget, recognizing revenues and appropriating expenditures by supplemental appropriation for the payment of the costs and expenses of the municipal government, agencies, and offices of the City of Northglenn, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018.
Move for approval.
Second.
Open the vote, Lisa?
You want Jim?
Discussion.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And
I knew we'd make at least one.
so let me just give you a brief overview. I know this is first reading, but as a follow-up to Mr. Loveland's presentation, capital projects being carried forward from 2017 to 2018 have been attached to the memo, and I would call your attention to page 2. I just want to call out a few highlights here. The dues and fees we're proposing to increase our membership level with the Metro North Chamber of Commerce based on Mr. Moss's presentation here a few weeks ago. The NAHF contribution was to change the per capita from $1 to $2 per person. There'll be a resolution in front of you tonight, CR 71, regarding the public communications specialist. So assuming that goes well, then that would be acted upon on second reading to amend the budget. The land acquisition piece there is the Westminster Tank easement adjacent to the Justice Center and the Justice Center West Park. Zoning code and sustainability contracts. This looks like a large change, but in fact, this is a carryover of money from last year. The projects were not completed in the 2017 budget, but these are non-CIP projects, so they don't carry over automatically. You have to take formal action. And then also you have a CR 67 tonight, which is related to the vehicle replacement for the police department vehicles, which is the next item there. The rest of these are largely related to either capital projects, not general fund expenditures, or enterprise funds operations. So we do recommend approval of this on first reading. Again, I'm here to answer questions as well as Mr. Loveland and additional staff tonight.
Any questions? Julie?
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to ask about the dues and fees for the North Metro Chamber. Is that what it's for, correct?
Yes.
The extra 10,000, what level of membership would that put us at, and what are the benefits of that 10,000?
All right, that is the trustee level, and it includes the Metro North Leadership Program. There's several things, but these are some of the highlights. Metro North Leadership Program enrollments, there's 2 of them, which we typically have a couple of people participating in that. Enhanced marketing package, enhanced event sponsor and ticket package. We also have visual recognition as a trustee in the chamber conference room. Company logo goes on their homepage. We have 10 weeks of advertising in the eConnect or on their website, which will be used by Economic Development. Dedicated email blasts, 1 per quarter to chamber members. Social media posts, chance to host a chamber video spotlight. Here's the big one, either half vertical or horizontal ad in the Metro North Connection magazine, which Mr. Moss was talking about, will be published, I believe, later this summer or early fall. Also a feature in the new member e-blast in metronorthchamber.com new member section. Also includes 4 tickets to the gala, 4 at the annual golf tournament, and 2 tickets to all chamber investor events. So this is very similar to what Ms. Tuttle and I were talking about with the prior CEO about not doing this a la carte where we were consistently getting requests for this event and that event, because it added up to about $8,500. And so with the $10,000 membership, we get a lot of this included, and it would help the chamber out too to rise our level or raise our level within the organization.
Thank you.
Jenny?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Wilford?
Jim, I was curious, I see $225,000 for Huron street fencing. That's already, you've done all of the easement estimation, and this is a solid amount. We're not going to have to come back and add more?
No guarantees of that. We had originally projected it was maybe $175,000, so we rounded that to an even 200 to put a $25,000 contingency on it. We're pretty confident in the number, but we wanted to get it on for action tonight while we work through that process over the next couple of months.
Okay, that's great. That makes sense. And last question on the dues and fees, is $8,500 what we spent last year, or were we at a different level that was perhaps lower?
We were much lower last year from a straight membership level. We paid a $1,000 membership and then another $1,000 to be part of the development council. And so then when we added up all of the a la carte things that we paid for, it came up to the over $8,000.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No one else? Is that it, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Lisa, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
The vote closes and CB 1905 passes unanimously.
Okay, CB 1906, trash ordinance amendment. Lisa, would you read the?
CB 1906, a bill for an ordinance amending Article 7 of Chapter 16 of the Northglenn Municipal Code to remove mattresses, bed springs, and box springs as special pickup items.
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Again, this is an amendment to the trash collection ordinance, which would regarding the elimination of the pickup of mattresses, bed springs, and box springs. Currently, we allow these to be picked up through the special pickup at no additional cost. We're recommending elimination of this service on July 1st of this year. The cost to provide this service directly to the city is about $20 per mattress or box spring. We're being charged that directly by our landfill provider. We are recommending approval of this ordinance on first reading, but I wanted to bring up a couple of things. I've talked to a few council members, a couple tonight, one earlier today who isn't here tonight, about if this moves forward, it does not prevent us from making some operational changes within the sanitation department division. We could provide a couple of drop-off times per year. We would charge for those direct costs. We understand Thornton's doing something similar, charging around $24 for that service to cover the material disposal fee as well as some labor. We're also more than willing to provide the name of the direct recycler to the residents so that they can contact them directly. One of our challenges in just picking them up and potentially storing them is that if they become wet or soiled, then the recycler will not pick them up. There's also a concern, if there's a small bed bug infestation, then all of a sudden we have an issue at our whole M&O facility. I wanted to highlight, too, some of the actual costs that could have been incurred if we would have had to pay this in years past. Again, this is a new fee, so we did not have to pay these charges. But in 2016, we picked up 1,534 mattresses. Wow. In 2017, it was 1,310 mattresses. So that would have been a direct cost of between $26,000 and $30,000 directly to the city. This year, through April 6th, we've collected 375. And so we're well on track to hit that 1,500 number again this year. So again, we do recommend approval. Again, we're open to any ideas about operational changes, but I think we are already in talk with Mr. Weber. We can probably do those pickup days or special drop-off days, I should say, again, with a direct charge to the person using the service.
Questions? Julie?
Thank you. So are we going to put the recycler, the name of the recycler on our website to direct folks? And how are we going to communicate this out so aren't surprised with the change?
Yeah, I've not flushed that out. I mean, we just started talking about it, these operational changes today. But yeah, website is a great way to do it. Obviously, social media, the connections are a great way to communicate this change out to everybody. Rob and I will work with Kim to make sure we implement a good campaign in that regard.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So you had mentioned possibly a special drop-off day. I'm just thinking not everybody has a truck, so maybe can we do a special pickup window, still charging them?
Mm-hmm. That's operationally very challenging. I would have Mr. Weber explain why that's more difficult and why we're recommending the ordinance as we've written it.
Okay.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, the issue with picking them up is really the $20 is just the landfill cost. That doesn't include our labor, the truck, and the time that it takes to go out and do that. And I mean, we're averaging 3.5 a day right now if you look at the average of picking those up. So what Thornton's doing is they put the link on their website for the recycle company, which is called Springback Colorado. There's only one recycling company in Colorado right now. They have locations in Colorado Springs, Denver, and Fort Collins. They do offer a pickup service. So their cost is, if you drop it off to them, they'll charge you $15 to $20 depending on the size. If you call them and you want them to come to your house and pick it up, it's I think it's $25 to $45 depending on the size.
Oh, great. Okay.
So they provide that service as well.
That's great information.
Yeah. Now, the daily pickups, or the 2 pickups a year, what we would do is identify a location where the recycler would come on site, and we would just have them do the transaction with the resident, but it's an easier way to do that for them, but you would have to have a truck to get them there. Okay.
Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Where are the 3.5 mattresses a day coming from right now? Are they residents who are calling you and asking them to be picked up? Are you picking them up from dumpsters where they've just been dropped off?
Well, we do get a few where people will just dump them off at the recycling containers over the weekend, but most of them are special pickups. And we do offer 2 free special pickups to every resident, every address in the city, and the 3rd pickup then is $100. But if anybody wants to have one, we can go pick it up for free, and that's usually what we're doing. So.
Is there any chance that we could continue the 2 special pickups and then just add the additional cost of recycling the mattress on to the resident's utility bill, and that way they're not necessarily missing out on that opportunity?
Right. I mean, we still will do the special pickups. We would just exempt this like we did appliances because of the difficulty of getting rid of them. One of the problems is storage. If we get them, we typically have to put them in a dumpster and then take them out, and then we're going to get billed the tonnage fee plus the recycle or not the recycle, but the dump fee for the mattresses, or we have to contact the recycle company to come pick them up, or we have to deliver them to them. So that's a very difficult process. Otherwise, we have to store them, or we have to take them to them right away. Otherwise, they'll get wet, or we'll deal with bed bugs and things like that.
Okay, but you're storing them right now until you...
No, right now what we do is when we pick them up, we mix them with other trash, because right now we can take them to the Erie landfill and they're not charging us the $20. So it just is a part of our regular dump fee, which I think out there a little higher than our dump fee out at Tower Road. I think it's $14 a ton. So it's just a part of that tonnage fee when we dump. So they go through, weigh it, and then they just charge us for that. But starting on July 1st, they're going to start charging us the mattress fee.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just really concerned about eliminating this, because I know for sure that we're going to start seeing mattresses, in the ditches, and, there's a lot of folks that can't afford having people come to recycle. In the business I'm in, I mean, they wait for us to take their disposable mattresses and different things away. So I think this is a bad ordinance, bad change, personally. I will vote to move it forward, but I don't see that I would ever vote for it, to pass. It's just a burden to our residents is what you're doing.
Anybody else? Well, I kind of feel the both sides. I don't want to see mattresses on the street. And I don't want to charge residents $20 to get rid of a mattress that is infested, bad, or whatever. It needs to be dumped somewhere. So I kind of agree with Councilman Downing that I'm not sure. I mean, we can move it forward and see how everybody else feels, but not something I want to sign up for tonight. Jenny?
Thank you. I'm just curious, what other, have you guys thought about other alternatives or obviously the city absorbing the cost. Have you thought about other creative alternatives to the way that, we might be able to continue to recycle these items for residents? Because 1,500 mattresses is obviously not small.
Right. The only thing that we've seen is, and we're glad there is a recycling company out there, but they're the only one out there. Our only alternative is to take them to the dump. I don't know what else the city could do to do that other than to just promote that, to have them take them themselves, or to call the recycling company themselves. We can certainly do, 2 or 3 times a year where we offer the pickup service, but we would have, if the city picks up the cost, we're going to have to increase the budget to pay for this, because it's something that we haven't had to pay additional for in the past. So I don't think any other cities come up with a better idea either. I know Thornton, they're charging a lot more, or they're just going directly to it. When they do their pickup days, they're going to charge their labor and all that, and they're going to figure that into the cost, the $20 plus the labor costs and all those things when they drop them off as well for those 2 drop-off days.
Outside of Thornton, are there any other municipalities that manage their own trash and hauling that we could check in with?
Yeah,
and see how they're
almost all
managing
of
it?
them are doing the same thing we are, because they're using the same landfills in the north. And almost all the landfills have done this. The landfill that we have our regular contract with started doing this last year, but the Erie landfill did not start, and now they're starting on July 1st. They're so difficult to get rid of, and there's not a lot of recyclable material, so I'm not sure what they're even doing just to recycle them.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. The $20 is just covering the fee to the dump, the recycle.
Right.
And we're still covering the wages.
Yes.
Transportation. Do we know what those are?
Yeah, well, it depends on where we have to go, but it's usually 1 or 2 guys that go out on a pickup for a special pickup. So you're talking about their labor, which is usually an hour to an hour and a half. They have to come back, unload it, and put it into a dumpster. So you're looking at maybe 1.5 to 2 hours, and their rate is probably somewhere around $35 to $40 an hour for those 2 guys. So it might be $80 additional dollars plus wear and tear on the equipment and fuel.
So when you're picking up mattresses, you're also picking up other items, though.
Sometimes it's just a mattress, but they can pick up the 10 items that's included, and a mattress can be a part of the 10 items right now.
I don't know. Well, I've seen different things, so let's see.
Yeah, on the website, there's a list of things that are exempted that we won't pick up: hazardous materials, tires, things like, we do charge extra for tires, that kind of thing.
And I understand that. But the more exemptions we have, we have a city, we have a beautification program that we would like to continue and make it better. And I would hate to see mattresses and other things laying around in the ditches and wherever else in the back of the businesses. And that's what happens. That's what happens. I mean, it happens now, so it's going to happen even more so.
Right. One of the things I think we're going to see is if we continue to provide the service for free, we're going to see relatives that live in Northglenn taking other people's mattresses from other communities. And that's why I think the numbers are so high anyway, because we do this basically for nothing.
Or you could put a limit on the number of mattresses per year. I mean, because I know there's a way to track that. So.
A quick question. So, has Thornton already moved to this program?
They have.
And when did they move there?
They moved at January 1st.
At the January 1st. And I'm not sure if you covered this in your conversation with them, but have they seen an increase of, mattresses in ditches and, just dumps?
I don't know that. I could talk to their director over there and find out if they're seeing that.
Yeah, I think it would just be kind of helpful to see, what have they experienced by making this change, to help guide us a little bit, because I personally feel that with the increased cost, I kind of feel like the city's hands are tied. I mean, if you buy a new mattress, you have to dispose of your old one. I don't really know what else to do. Same thing with appliances. I mean, just kind of how the world works.
Right.
So, but that's my personal feeling on it. But I would like to see what Thornton has experienced, because I think that could be.
I'll reach out to them tomorrow
really
and get to Jim and let everybody on council know. Okay.
Thank you.
While you do that, can you also explore a partnership with them so that maybe we can share?
With Thornton?
With Thornton, Westminster,
Well, Westminster they don't do their own trash. They're all independently contracted. But the city of Thornton would be willing to consider to partner with us on those days where we could have Northglenn and Thornton work together to have anybody in those two communities come and drop them off. They would like to do that. I mean, it makes sense for us to do that. It's better for the recycle company as well because they don't have to mobilize twice and they can bring their trucks and all those kind of things one day. Or we could do, you know, they do 2 days, we do 2 days, but allow anybody to come from either of those communities. So yeah, we've talked about that.
Okay, good. That would be helpful, I think. Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You open the vote, Lisa?
The vote is open.
No, no.
I got one.
There you got it. Vote twice.
Now I have a vote.
She can vote for one of these. I know.
The vote is closed and CB 1906 passes on first reading unanimously.
Okay. CB 1907?
CB 1907, a bill for an ordinance amending the City of Northglenn Municipal Code by the addition thereto of a new Article 17 to Chapter 18 regarding entertainment districts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. So this is a proposal to amend Chapter 18 of the Municipal Code with addition of new article to authorize the creation of entertainment districts. The key distinction tonight is this is an enabling ordinance. It does not create districts tonight. It's really just to enable the process to move forward. It would allow for opting in to the authorization of creating entertainment districts, creates a process for the local licensing authority, which in this case would be the Northglenn Liquor Licensing Authority, to certify, recertify, and decertify a promotional association and approve the operation of a common consumption area as proposed by the promotional association, and also establishes procedures for a liquor licensee to attach themselves to the common consumption area. And there are detailed definitions in the memo for you as well. As referenced in step 1 on page 2, this would provide flexibility in the process for proposing and considering an entertainment district. So the ordinance allows 2 different options. Could be the city council creates the entertainment district by some proactive action on your part, or you would consider a case-by-case creation of entertainment districts based on presumably a promotional association or other liquor licensed establishment coming in and requesting such a district. One of the things that we had talked about internally as a staff is at some point, you know, depending on which path you choose, we could bring forward resolutions to adopt specific geographic areas, such as the marketplace, such as Civic Campus, Webster Lake Promenade, et cetera. And then that would kind of grease the wheels for the common consumption area applications to come in subsequent to that. So we do recommend approval on first reading, and Mr. Hoffman, of course, here to answer any questions that you may have about it as well.
Question? Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a comment. I just want to thank Jim and the staff and Corey and everyone and Debbie for drafting this. I think it's really exciting and excited to see what location it's but thank you.
Anybody else?
No.
Lisa?
Vote is open. The vote is closed and CB 1907 passes on first reading unanimously. And I'd like to state for the record that the public hearings on CB 1905, CB 1906, and CB 1907 will be held on June 11th, 2018 in City Hall Council Chambers.
Thank you, Lisa. Moving to resolutions. Resolution CR 64. Lisa, would you read the title, please?
CR 64, a resolution to authorize the city manager to issue a purchase order to Bruckner Truck Sales Incorporated for a total amount not to exceed $297,253 for the purchase of one automated trash truck.
Move for approval.
Second.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Again, this is a resolution to consider the purchase of a sidearm Max Scorpion side load automated trash truck. We did the cooperative bid system and was selected a vendor through Bruckner's Sales in Commerce City. The appropriation was $325,000, so this came in under budget at $297,253, and we do recommend approval of this resolution.
Discussion? Hearing none, would you open the vote?
The vote is open. The vote is closed and CR 64 passes unanimously.
Okay, CR 65.
CR 65, a resolution approving an agreement between the City of Northglenn and C&L Water Solutions Incorporated for the 2018 Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Program.
Move for approval.
Second.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This is a resolution to approve a contract for the 2018 Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Program. Again, the budgeted amount was $265,000, and we got a proposal based on the amount of work we bid for $185,703. So there's a very, very large contingency on here, and the reason for that is that we are changing the methodology a little bit this year. Mr. Kisselman can explain further if you have some questions about that. But the idea is that if we can get more pipe done after the company gets on board, then we would use some of that contingency for that amount, for that work. We do recommend approval of this resolution.
Okay. Jenny?
I'm just curious, there were two bids and there's about $900 difference. What created the winner in this one?
Have Mr. Kisselman come up and discuss the process for that.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, Council, thank you. In this situation, the low bid was C&L, and they're, if you recall, they're our emergency contractor. They've done work with us in the past, so we have a really good relationship with them. So this one was kind of a low bid, C&L, select them.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jen. Lisa, would you open the vote?
The vote is open. The vote closes and CR 65 passes unanimously.
Okay. CR 67. You read the title, Lisa?
We're on CR 66.
66? Oh, 66.
CR 66, a resolution approving an agreement between the City of Northglenn and Martin Marietta Materials Incorporated for the 2018 Residential Street Program.
Yeah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. This is a resolution to approve the contract for the 2018 Residential Street Program. We did present this to you in a study session on February 5th. We've actually included a copy of that memo for your reference. The lowest responsible bidder was Martin Marietta Materials with a base bid of $762,301. We did reference check, determined their performance was on similar projects did meet our standards. We had an appropriation in the Capital Projects Fund of $750,000, but we also had a rollover of $125,000 from last year. So this is well below the appropriated amount. We use a contingency of roughly 15%, and the intent of that is to use that for signage and striping work as part of the Connect Northglenn program. So again, we talked about as that plan was being adopted, if we could leverage some of the residential street program to implement parts of that plan, we would like to do that here. So we are recommending approval of this resolution, and Mr. Kisselman's here to answer any detailed questions you may have as well.
All right. Any discussion? Okay. Lisa, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
The vote closes and CR 66 passes unanimously.
Now we move on to CR 67.
CR 67, a resolution to authorize the city manager to issue a purchase order to Siltahar Motors Incorporated for a total amount not to exceed $60,994 for the purchase of city vehicles.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Again, this is a resolution to purchase 2 patrol vehicles that were determined as totaled by CIRSA and require replacement. This was part of the CB 1905 that you acted on first reading earlier. This is a total appropriation of $110,000. This would include the purchase price, equipment, and setup, approximately $55,000 per vehicle. We do recommend approval of this resolution, and Chief May is here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Discussion? Gonna get off, Chief?
We should.
No discussion, open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
The vote closes and CR 67 passes unanimously.
Okay, CR 70. Read the title, Lisa.
CR 70, a resolution adopting employee guidelines for the city of Northglenn, Colorado.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. April 23rd, we presented some employee guideline amendments for city council review and comment. There are 2 that are part of this resolution. The first is a revised respecting the rights of co-workers guideline. And the guideline has been amended now to include city council members in the guideline as requested by council. The second was a new guideline entitled Problem Resolution, really intended to provide employees a mechanism to address general employee complaints and concerns in a more formal process. We do recommend approval, and Ms. Jensen here is able to answer any questions you may have as well.
Any questions? Discussion? No? Everybody's happy with that, huh? Great. Lisa, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
The vote closes and CR 70 passes unanimously.
Okay, CR 71.
CR 71, a resolution amending the City of Northglenn 2018 personnel summary.
Move to approve.
Second.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Again, this is another item that was in CB 1905, a budget personnel summary amendment. We're seeking to reclassify 1 full-time administrative assistant position to public communications specialist. In January of this year, you approved the addition of 1 full-time administrative assistant in the communications division of the city manager's office. Since that time, we've hired Ms. Ryan, our new communications manager, in March. And after being on board for a couple of months and developing, her plan for her division, it was determined that we probably need a higher level position within the division to perform the functions and execute the plan that she's looking to do. So we do recommend approval of this resolution, and Ms. Jensen's here to answer any questions about the process, and then Ms. Ryan can answer any detailed questions you may have about the what this person may be doing for us.
Discussion? Julie?
Yeah, I guess it would be nice to have an overview of this position, and then where do you see this person's time being focused?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Could you repeat the second part of your question? I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, where is this person's time going to be focused? What projects are they going to be doing? A little bit of the job.
Sure, you bet. So currently, we have 1 communications specialist, John Eisel, who is responsible for the website, social media, connections newsletter, all graphic design, all signage, and distributing press releases. So it's really a lot on 1 individual. Mm-hmm. So we can see a lot more communications taking place, which I know is a priority of council, if we had another help doing that. One of the major things I see this person doing is video production. There's a lot more we can do on the website as far as developing content, a lot more we can do with social media. We're getting increasing demands for graphic design assistants from staff. So we have a lot of projects like that. The neighborhood engagement campaign, the new UDO that's coming out. So there's a lot more demands on communication.
So would you ask that this individual have particular skills specifically in video management, and you said social media and some of the graphic
Yes,
design
similar
work?
to the current public communications specialist. We're looking for a communications, marketing, journalism background, emphasis on graphic design and video production.
Great, thank you.
How quickly are you hoping to hire somebody?
Immediately, we'd like to post actually this month.
Great. Tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow. Okay. Well, great.
So that'll be a huge help for the 50th birthday.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that very much.
Fantastic.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, would you open the vote?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
The vote closes and CR 71 passes unanimously.
Okay, CR 72. Title, please.
CR 72, a resolution approving addendum number 2 to the professional services agreement between the City of Northglenn and RSM US LLP, formerly McGladry LLP, for audit services.
Move to approve.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Again, this is a resolution to extend the professional service agreement for audit services to include 2017 and 2018. This is budgeted, and we do recommend approval. Mr. Loveland can answer any questions you may have as well.
Any questions? No. Having none, open the vote, please, Lisa.
Vote is open.
Thank you. Please vote.
The vote closes and CR 72 passes unanimously.
Okay. We'll move into discussion items. Marijuana tax.
Yeah, I'll start, and Mr. Loveland is here as well as Mr. Hoffman to add anything. But council had requested at the April 2nd study session, when we were having the retreat debrief, that we have a discussion about the current 2% sales tax structure on retail and medical marijuana and marijuana products. And so the memo is pretty straightforward. It's really just to spur some discussion, but to really identify a few issues that we think are relevant to your policy discussion. Number one is, what are other jurisdictions doing? What are their rates? And so that's shown in the table on the first page there. You can see a comparison of how we compare to others. How much revenue is generated? Well, the city's 2% tax generated $619,000 in 2017. So you could roughly assume that for every 1%, we're getting around $300,000. This is based on 5 centers. There is a 6th center under construction, so presumably that would go up proportionately. And then also, lastly, I had the city clerk put together on the second page, because this would be a Tabor question, because it's a tax issue. If you chose to put something on the ballot this year, here's some of the deadlines that we would be facing, which are relatively soon. And we estimate the cost of said election to be around $25,000. We did not, we're not asked to prepare anything about licensing, permitting, things like that. It's really just a tax question that we were asked to come back with. So with that, I'd turn it over to you to ask questions and have some discussion.
Okay. Discussion, Ms. Wilford?
I'm just curious, what is the purpose of this discussion? Is it to say, yes, we want to move forward? Is it to say, look, we want to have a study session, an entire discussion? Like, what are you trying to get out of this time right now?
Well, I think it's somewhat challenging because we have a third of the council not here tonight.
Exactly.
So you could start the discussion, maybe offer your opinions about rate, the timing of increasing the rate, decreasing the rate, eliminating, whatever you would like to do. And then we'd probably want to revisit this issue relatively soon, either at a study session or another discussion at a regular meeting.
I personally would love to see this move to a study session, but I'll defer to the rest of the council.
Mayor Pro Tem, I agree. I think this is something we need to spend more time on and then have our full council. But in addition to that, when looking at Denver, Inglewood, you have 3.5 to a 15%. Is it just somewhere in between there, or I'm just not understanding why you have that sliding scale so significant?
Thank you, sir.
May I answer?
Yes, please.
So some of the ballot questions that other municipalities asked, they actually set a range. So those will range from 3.5% to 10%, with language that identified that the rate would never go above 10%, and additionally that they would never move on an annual basis more than like 1.5% per year. So it did provide some room in there. And so I think Denver, Boulder, Inglewood, I think people just started to copy language, quite honestly, and kind of play along with what was initially adopted.
That's fair. So we're going to take a question like this to have the conversation at a study session and say, do we want to take this to the ballot? If so, what is our language for the sliding scale? And then who makes a determinant on the actual percentage rate that our city would then implement? It would be.
Right.
Perfect. So
You would have the flexibility then under the ballot language to
be able
pass
to-
subsequent tax rates.
So do we know exactly what Denver currently has? Their percentage rate? Because I know this is a sliding scale for the voter, but.
I believe theirs is 3.65%.
Do we have time to get this done before these deadlines?
I'm worried about the deadlines.
The July.
Yeah, this would be adopted by ordinance or resolution?
Resolution.
Resolution.
The ballot
So-
questions by resolution.
So you would have to approve the resolution no later than August 27th.
So can we get it on a study session?
So what you're saying is we could notify the intent before the resolution passes?
Yes, that's the first deadline, is to notify the intent, and that may require our commitment of the $25,000 at that point on July 30th.
So that's what I'm wondering.
No. Okay. I'm out of my element here, so I refer to
The reason for the August date is because the first regular meeting of the city council in September is September 10th, which is the deadline, which is after the deadline to certify the ballot content. So that last meeting in August is the last day where you have a regular council meeting where you can certify ballot content. So that's the date.
But my question is, do we need to approve the resolution before the 30th? Or are we going to be?
Before the 30th of?
July.
No.
No.
You do not need to approve the ballot language until your last meeting in August.
Okay, so when do they need the money? Like if
What's
They-
the $25,000?
hypothetically.
Yeah, they bill us after the election, once they have identified all the costs. So in a perfect world, we would let them know by July 30th that, yes, we're going to have a question.
But the
So that they can plan and have an idea of what to look forward to, since they're coordinating with many other municipalities as well.
But based on this schedule, your commitment date, if you will, is that last meeting in August. Because that's the last day you can meet both the deadline for the IGA and certifying the ballot content, absent a special meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Jordan?
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. One more question, Jason. So when looking at the two different columns between retail and medical, so why do so many not have a tax percentage rate in medical? You just said it universally marijuana, or?
I can probably answer that. I think it's the timing. It was that they were, the two types of marijuana were approved at different times, and so different actions were taken. Some approved only for medical when medical was adopted, and then later did one for recreational, so they're not always consistent.
Interesting. So when looking to, and maybe this is a discussion for study session, to say that we're going to open it up for retail, medical, and together, is that something we were looking to do, or?
You certainly could.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I would just point out one thing that I think is a little bit unique about Northglenn, and that is at least my recommendation is that there's not probably a market for an excise tax, because you don't have cultivation in Northglenn in any large degree for wholesale, because the way your cultivation in Northglenn works, you have to have a business in Northglenn, a retail business in Northglenn, to cultivate in Northglenn, which means you're normally not going to have the wholesale.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you need anything from us, Jim?
I would just clarify, is there support then for a study session to dive in? Okay. The next available study session would be June 4th. I would probably recommend that we target that night. We've done the initial research, so I don't know if there's much more for staff to do. I would just point out we have 4 items on that night already. One is the sustainability audit, City Hall space assessment recommendations, street program integration and CIP recommendations, and then really related to that is transportation CIP. And the transportation CIP is directly related to an IGA that we need to be executing with all the cities in Adams County in June, related to the Dr. Cog TIP funding, which is the sub-regional allocation. So we can put this on for sure. It'll be a busy night, but I think a couple of those things are very related regarding transportation.
Sounds good. Thank you. Let's do it.
Okay.
And Jim, if you could, we could have some pros and cons of what other people have done when they've raised the taxes. You know, I mean, it would be interesting to know whether, if we choose to go to 3, 3.5, 4, excuse me, when do you price yourself out? And when do you cause other people to move out?
Is council interested in part of the analysis in what our neighbors are taxing? Because certainly previously, that was one of the issues the city council looked at in its tax policy, was from a competitive standpoint, what the neighbors were charging, so that you knew what the total cost was if you went to Thornton, for example, versus Northglenn, the total tax burden.
That makes sense.
I think it's important, yeah. And I mean, we have to be mindful too that these are businesses, and, you know, any tax increase, you know, does affect them. So I'd like to get kind of a holistic picture of this impact.
Thank you, Jim. Next, the Q1 2018 work plan update.
If I wrote my notes big enough, I don't need this. We'll see. All right. Well, again, in front of you have the presentation for the first quarter 2018 work plan update. So I'm going to walk through some highlights relatively quickly. So again, this is intended to track major projects, operational initiatives. We also track a lot of data here. Again, the purpose is to provide some summary information for you as well as the public, which is why we do it at regular meetings. So a lot of this information, again, is through March 31st of 2018, and I'll explain how we kind of oriented this differently for this quarter. We had a discussion at the retreat about city council goals, and we're going to be bringing that back hopefully in June for more discussion. But as a result, we did not tie the projects or the operational initiatives to specific goals anymore. We tied them to program areas. So a lot of the data points are still tied to those old 6 goals that we had. So it's organized a little differently than what you may have seen in the past. But I think it'll be clear. Just to orient you again to the check marks and the bullet points, rather than having a whole next 90 days section on these presentations, the check marks indicate something that has been completed in the first quarter. A dot or bullet point represents something that will be happening hopefully in the second quarter or maybe later in the year. So the Enhanced Community Image program area, we had 3 main projects there. First would be develop the marketing plan. So I have, of course, initiated discussions with Ms. Ryan about that. We're going to be looking at bringing that back to you in a study session. I think we're targeting June 18th for that discussion. Website redesign, we're in the final stages of the content for all the pages, targeting a launch to the public in June. Branding and logo implementation, again, that commenced early last year, and that will continue through 2020. The next major program area is the major public facilities. So, of course, we have the Justice Center, done a lot of operations and maintenance budget planning. We had a study session discussing some of that on March 19th. FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment contracting, is close to complete. The intersection, if you've noticed, and the traffic signal design is not only designed, but has been mostly constructed at this point. And as we start to look at the last 90 days, we're going to be scheduling a more detailed budget update and discussion with you. I actually met with Mr. Loveland, Mr. Weber, and Nate Hasis this morning to talk about how the budget is looking for to completion of the project, because we're getting a lot more finer grain on the final costs. The Ralston House. Again, we received the construction cost revenue from all the municipal parties, so every single jurisdiction that's a party to that project has paid. We did the contracting in February, broke ground on March 1st. Construction is ongoing, looking at Q4 for an opening. Northwest Open Space construction is currently in design. Back in March, we were hoping to get some GOCO funding. Unfortunately, we did not receive that funding, but we did get a favorable recommendation for $1.7 million from the ADCO Open Space Advisory Board, which was approved. We also received an additional $340,000 for the project. So we're in the process of construction procurement right now. I would say realistically that contract is probably looking like August, so that would be technically third quarter. Another big parks project is the Kiwanis Outdoor Pool Bathhouse Replacement and Splash Pad Addition. I can say that 3 times fast, right? The design review is presented to you in a study session, and the construction contract approval also is planned for August. We're, of course, not going to do that project this year. We'll have one more season there and then get going in earnest so that we can have it open hopefully for the next year in May, hopefully not into June. Justice Center West Park, again, we had this as a project for this year. We're really just determining the approach to funding on there, doing some initial concept designs. And then our goal really for this whole year is to finalize the funding approach, have the concept design with outreach to the community, especially people in the immediate area, because it really will be a neighborhood-centered park as opposed to somewhere you might drive and park at. Pivoting to the Civic Campus. So the master plan, financing, design, infrastructure, and implementation. We issued the RFP for the program administrator, finalized the public engagement. You received a report on that. So again, a lot of these dates have already passed. April 9th, we gave you that final report. You did approve the execution of the project, or the program manager contract. Ms. Tuttle and I are actually going to be attending the International Conference of Shopping Centers Retail Convention next week. We have several meetings set up, largely with retailers that are looking, and owners of property in our area that will be looking at maybe even expanding their holdings into the Civic Campus public-private partnership. A lot of people are willing to meet with us, though, here locally, too. So, namely hoteliers and hotel developers are to be our target audience. The other thing is we're looking at refining that budget and schedule. So we've talked a lot about the $53 million, which would be, again, $40 million for the building, $13 million for infrastructure. We've had a couple of really great meetings with Project One already, and we have a budget and schedule meeting this Friday. So we're planning a more robust update for you in July as we get our handle on those things and start to put a finer grain on how does that $13 million break down, how does that $40 million break down. Related to the Civic Campus is a City Hall space assessment. So you budgeted some money for that this year. And we completed some of that initial work with the architect. We presented that assessment to the leadership team. And again, this will be essentially looking at what do we do with this level of the building when the police department move out at the end of the year, but then also how can we provide maybe better customer service upstairs, whether it be passports, utility billing, working with economic development, building permits, and so we'll be bringing that assessment back to you next month for your review. So now we pivot to how these tie to some of the goals here. And I'm not going to read all of these. These are in your packet, but I just want to kind of orient you to it. So first of all, if it's highlighted in green, then we're ahead of the goal we've set for the year. Granted, it's not guaranteed that we're going to hit that goal after just 90 days, but we're on track. If it's black, then it just means that it's, not quite hitting the goal yet. And if it's a blank in that 2018 column, that means it's more of a reactive data point. So we didn't necessarily set a goal. As a good example, snow removal. Well, that's very reactive. We have to depend on what storms are coming, and then we'll do it accordingly. So I wanted to point out that I think Public Works and Parks and everyone did a very good job this year of using the last couple years of data and saying, let's set a realistic goal that is still challenging, but something we can achieve. A good example of that is the catch basins. We had set goals in prior years, 117, 122. That was probably a little more than we could have achieved in a normal year. And so we set a more realistic goal of 80. Hopefully we can get up to over 100, but more realistic is a goal of 80. So now pivoting back to program areas, talk about government policy. Again, the Legislative Policy Committee did an outstanding job this year, very engaged with the legislature and our lobbyists and Mr. Hoffman. We're looking at the date for the lobbyist report, again, is June 25th. Is when Mr. Wilson would come and present. Again, I prepared this slide before we had talked about moving it from October, so we're, again, targeting that last meeting in that last week of August for the dinner. Water Policy Administration had a great executive session in January with our water attorney, who's also an engineer. I had a subsequent meeting with Mr. Frick as well as Mr. Weber and Tammy Moon, where we were talking about meeting quarterly going forward. And we are also going to be looking at updating the water resource plan for 2019, putting that into the budget. The last time we did that was 2006. And so it definitely needs updating. We've got a lot more water that we've acquired at this point. And long term, we have a water acquisition sales tax that's going to be expiring in about 7 years. So do we want to repurpose that? Do we still need that? Those are the kind of things we'll be looking at that'll be coming to you as policy matters. Xcel Energy Franchise Agreement. Again, Mr. Gibson from Xcel was here. I think that was a couple months ago to kind of kick off the project. I think Mr. Hoffman and I are actually meeting tomorrow on that. And so we'll be then having more discussion with Mr. Gibson. Again, this will be a project that will spill into 2019. And I would point out that at the CML conference in June, Xcel also is willing to host a specific time to meet with our city. So I know I attended that meeting in years past. It was really beneficial to meet some of the executives at Xcel and talk about some of their things like the Renewable Connect program for businesses and some of their alternative energy things that they're working on. Capital project financing. Again, we're always looking at the 5-year CIP. Mr. Lovell and I had a good conversation last week, and I think part of that is a follow-up to the retreat where we talked about the $1 million a year that we get from the 4 mil property tax that the voters thankfully approved in perpetuity without a sunset provision. How do we leverage that money for regional projects like 120th? Do we put it onto Huron Street? Do we pay as you go? Those are the kind of questions we're going to need to be wrestling with throughout the summer. Historic preservation, again, great accomplishments. Certified local government status in 2017. Good analysis of St. Stephen's Church, Des Estates, and the Stonehawker Park site. And we did a quick review of that with you in a study session earlier this year as well. UDO, do I need to talk much about this. You know what's going on here. Just for the benefit of the public, this is an ongoing process throughout the year, and one of the things that we've offered to all of you as City Council is if you want Clary and our consultants to come and attend one of your ward meetings in the fall, we're more than happy to do that. I know we're already looking at a date for Ward 4. And so, again, please give us a couple months' notice if you can. That would be really helpful. And just a quick plug for the meeting next Monday. Mr. Svoboda will be here to walk through some of the discussion items with that Module 3 that we talked about last week. So if you've got some specific questions, please let us know. The Planning Commission is having their discussion tomorrow night, so they would not necessarily be joining us on Monday. So it'll be a council-focused discussion. Again, goal 2, fiscally responsible government. I'm really looking forward to long-term using that rec track system with Ms. Peterson to report in a much finer grain on some of these categories. But you can see we're way above the goal for senior visits, registrations, theater booking days, theater participants. Really shows the demand for those two parts of the new recreation center moving forward. Information technology. Again, these are kind of some standard numbers. I want to point out a minor error on this. I got ahead of myself. I was so excited. We had 215 downloads. That was actually as of a week ago. So the first quarter, obviously, we didn't have very many because we had really unveiled it. I think we had 13 or 15. So just a minor typo there. But I think we're up to 240 something as of today. So really exciting. We're getting it out there. And I think when the website goes live, it's going to be even more well received. Couple things here. Turnover, again, lower than last year. We like to be below 10%. That's a kind of a reasonable level for a government our size. Workers' compensation claims, probably a little ahead of last year, unfortunately. We always want this to be a decreasing trend. And in terms of our workers' compensation insurance rates, they use a 3-year rolling calendar. So as those 34s drop off from 2016, as long as we can keep a good trend going, then our insurance rates should presumably go down, or refunds will be coming our way at least. I'm not going to talk too much about the economic development section. We specifically designed it so that Debbie would give her quarterly update the same night I'm giving this presentation. So I think there was a lot of good information there that she already provided. A lot of you have heard about the courts. I know one of the tenants had reached out to some of you, and so they are in the process of getting their building permit, working through some of the final details with the staff right now. The Industrial Park Wayfinding Program, we're evaluating some existing agreements from the pilot program and determining some timing for amending that plan in the second quarter. But again, this would be to provide some common signage for our industrial users, most notably Irma, Leroy, and also Huron Street on the north side. Again, Marketplace, we've talked extensively about that. We will be meeting with the HCP, the owners of the Marketplace, at the convention next week. Huron Center, I want to point out some dates just to reinforce what Debbie had said. These dates were provided by the owner, but I'm pretty confident in them given all the construction we've seen out there. Arby's expected to open in June. AutoZone in Q2, which I guess would also be June. And then Save-A-Lot expected to open by the third quarter. So again, these are dates provided to us by the owner, so hopefully we can help keep them on track. Carl's Farm, in the first quarter, we actually continued a lot of meetings with the applicant / buyer as well as the seller, who's the owner. And they actually did make a formal submittal a couple weeks ago. So the DRC, our Development Review Committee, met last week and are working through that process right now. I would point out that they are not going to be targeting 2018 for the election for their special district. They have reset their expectation to be 2019. It's just there's no way to meet the deadline and have the entitlements in place that would probably make you feel very comfortable about the land use piece. And that's all I'm going to say because it is an application in process. So I saw Corey looking at me there. So. Goal number 3, again, strong competitive businesses. You heard a lot of data from Debbie here. Again, ahead of pace on ribbon cuttings, home-based businesses, the prospect activity, it's all up for this year so far. Some development activity. Again, nothing's really ahead of last year at this point. Our goal is just an upward trend. Some of this, of course, is more challenging than others when you're talking about residential permits. We're not building a lot of new homes at this point, but with the trend of Carl's Farm coming online here next year, hopefully that'll go up pretty substantially. And the land use entitlements, again, that's in process at the end of the quarter. So as things get through the process, they drop off. So it's just kind of an update about where we're at with some major projects at this point. So big section is the operational initiatives. The CRM system, again, Citizen Relationship Management System, kicked off. It is live now. And again, we think we're going to be getting a lot more users downloading that as we move forward. I would point out that we are still completing the configuration for code enforcement. So they're actually doing double entry right now. They're taking the old system and then adding stuff into the new system as complaints come in. So it's a good way to kind of beta test it, really, but it is live data in their system. So the configuration is a lot more complex with that because of the legal issues, of course, with going to court and things, but also the production of letters and reports and things like that. 50th anniversary, we had a great discussion last week on that as well. We'll be looking at developing at least a high-level budget for that for 2019. Neighborhood engagement program. Again, this is something coming out of the planning division, but it's also something that's going to be involving a lot of key staff throughout the city. We did an outline to the leadership team. Brooke and his team presented that, doing more interviews with key staff, and we'll be bringing that back for your discussion in June as well. Kind of let you know where we're thinking about that. If you're familiar with what Arvada has been doing, they have an incredibly robust program. They put a lot of money into it, but I think it's been very, very successful over there. And our folks have gone over and met with those people as well to find out how it's working. HEAL program and sustainability. Again, you've received some updates there. Really, they're in the process of preparing their spring and summer outreach efforts right now. The sustainability program, again, will be coming back in June with another update with that for you. Homeless Task Force. So we had another meeting today. As I joked with the group, the purpose of a task force is to complete your tasks and then close up shop, really. So I think we've made a lot of great progress here. Reviewed a lot of the legal issues with all of you. I'll give you an update on the Adams County Homeless Coalition. Unfortunately, they had 2 staff people leave the county, and so it's kind of on life support at this point. And so we're continuing to participate with the other cities, but that might be kind of in fits and starts through the balance of the summer. I think some of the things they're looking at is more long-term housing, where they'd be tiny homes or things like that, as opposed to a shelter angle. And so it's just going to take a lot more resource and coordination going forward. We did a detailed intersection analysis, and we'll be bringing some ordinance revisions to you, hopefully as early as next month. Excuse me. And then hosted a lunch and learn, not only with local businesses, but in April we had one specifically for the marketplace. And so it's very similar to what Commander Lopez did for all the businesses in the community. So we'll be bringing a lot of information back there too. Couple things related to organizational development. Again, this is a multi-year effort that I've undertaken as part of the work plan. The reason I put it on there is to let people know how important it is. We've got a great culture, great family atmosphere with all of our employees here at the city. I just want to expand on that. I think we can just look to our neighbors to the north in Fort Collins and see the amazing things they've done there with receiving the Baldridge Award. Well, it took them 8 years to get that. So this is not going to change overnight. But one of the things we've already looked at is a new compensation philosophy. And again, this is not specific about the budget, but really, as we get the budget adopted later this year, is to communicate to our employees what is the philosophy going forward? Market raises, merit raises, opportunities for advancement, succession planning, those types of things. And so we had a small group that put that together, and then we discussed it with the leadership team, and there was pretty good consensus to use that. Performance management, we're actually having a meeting on that Wednesday. We're probably not going to be able to implement anything for the 2019 budget. I know right before I arrived here in 2016, the staff did a great job of enhancing the performance evaluation form. It's much better than it was in years past. But we're looking at making some additional enhancements to that. Dare I say, pay for performance. And so setting more realistic goals for people and then holding them accountable for achieving those goals. And so that's probably more of a 2020 implementation with respect to the budget. Some succession planning. I know some of you have had questions about this with respect to the Public Works Director. We're going to be posting that position on June 1st. We've set a multi-step process there, a couple different panel interviews, and we'd hope to have someone with an offer in place by August and then on board by September, depending on if it's an internal candidate or someone who needs to move from out of state. The other thing, I'm going to plant the seed right now. I'm evaluating the addition of a deputy city manager in the 2019 budget. The amount of operational things that, frankly, I'm managing right now is pretty substantial. And I think some of these organizational development things, some of the policy level discussions we're having require a lot of my time, and I think that's where my time is best spent. So we'll have more discussions about that as we get into the budget, and I'm more than willing to listen to any of you at any time about that topic, of course. Levels of service and operations, just a few highlights there. Police department staffing plan is very important. It's going to have an impact on next year's budget, as it does every year. The CRM system, general enhanced communication efforts. And then I'm also, continuing to meet with the department heads and some of their managers about evaluating our effectiveness. What are our levels of service? How do we measure those things? And I think some of the data in the work plan is really helping us get that in the right direction. So, final thing on organizational development, goals, mission statement, organizational values. Again, we'll be bringing back the City Council goals for more discussion with you next month. We did develop some core values at the staff leadership team in December, but as we got into more discussion about that, we didn't want to be hasty because they should be very thoughtful about adopting those, and so we're going to have more discussion throughout the year about those values. So almost done here. I want to give you some neighborhood services data. I've got 3+ years of data here, and a thing I think you can see here is that we are ahead of the pace on cases, violations, and graffiti from last year. And it's been an upward trend the last few years. So a lot of activity in the Code Enforcement Division. Last program area to talk about before I get to the final goal information is transportation. A lot of discussion about traffic calming. That is clearly going to create a budget impact in 2019. We've had really good meetings with on Melody as well as Claude. Next week, you're going to be hearing an update on Livingston as well as 112th Place. And again, June 4th will be our discussion of some of the transportation funding impacts for next year. Bike ped mobility, hard to believe that's been a few months already, but you just adopted the plan back in February. And as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at applying the residential street program fund contingency towards implementing some of that program. And again, that is a typo there. It's PCI analysis or pavement condition index. Again, that's how we're implementing the program. We're trying to get to the streets before they get so far gone we have to rebuild them, try to get more life out of them as we move forward. And of course, I know you're probably tired of me talking about this, but the corridor plan, the citywide streetscape improvements, and the complete streets ordinance, this is really the next step to get our head around what we want to do long term for the community in terms of policy discussion. I will tell you that we've got a couple of things that we are moving forward with. Of course, the Huron Street fence That was direction given, and we're moving forward with that. And also met with Mr. Kisselman in a couple different meetings talking about the Malley Grant intersection. You identified that as a retreat priority. So we're looking at some traffic signal improvements that we can make there that would be bid as part of our traffic signal program. And we've got money in the CIP to make some improvements there. I think it's less than $50,000 to make some improvements.
Jim, I've got a question with the,
yes.
The lights. Are we looking at permissive lights, when we interchange?
That's exactly.
Okay, because I think that's really a good idea, and it would probably help with backlog and some of those.
Yeah, protected and permissive is what we'll be looking at. And the reason for the large cost is we have to upgrade the cabinet to do that. So that's why it's in that 40, 50,000 range. And our traffic signal program has $100,000 budget annually, so this would be on top of that. So about 150 total. So.
Thank you.
And then last, I would point out some things with the police department. Again, calls for service. We're about on track as last year, over 9,000 calls through the first quarter. So very, very busy in the first quarter of the year. And so that's it for my remarks. I would point out that we also do a CIP update twice a year. So February and August, that's usually enough time to have some progress on projects. And that's much more interesting because there's a lot of pictures with that. So I'll make sure and bring those next time. But open for any questions, and staff is here as well if you have some details that you need me to answer.
Questions?
I have a couple.
Comment?
Yeah, just real quick. So the CRM, I think, is absolutely amazing. I play with it every now and then, put my little questions in there. But what I like about it is the fact that it's so responsive to the person that's putting the concern in. And then the most recent one, I actually got a survey asking me about my experience with it.
Thank you for your comments in the survey, too.
Which I thought was great. I was like, that works. And so, but because I used it, I was able to then explain it to a resident who had no idea what was happening. And so I don't know where that gap is. So, for example, the resident said something to me. I passed it on to you. Right. You put it in the system. The resident got a strange email. Oh. And he was like, what is this? And he actually said, is this a phishing scam? Like, what is this? Oh. And so, but because I had used it, I was able to fully explain, this is the purpose, this is how it works. And he was totally good with it. But I'm just wondering if they're not putting it in themselves and they get these weird emails. I don't know. I don't know how to fix that. I think it may just iron itself out the more we know and the more we communicate. But I was wondering when we'll get some data. I think it'd be really great to be able to communicate back to the residents, thank you for using the system. This is the information we have. This is how we're being responsive. Because I truly believe that the system hits one of my biggest concerns, and one of the reasons I even ran, is that responsiveness and communication with the city. So I think it's great, but we'll just work out the kinks.
Yeah, I agree. That is a challenge because if you're giving it to us, we're going to put it in. Moreover, if a resident calls in and we can get an email from them, we're going to put it into the system. And so we probably got to make sure staff is telling them, hey, you're going to get an email response from this system when they're calling in even. I think if they're going in and do it themselves, they're going to expect it. But yeah, that's a very good point. We've been trying to work on some reporting functions so that we'll attach a council-initiated items report on Friday so that you can see what all of you are putting into the system, or even referring residents to put in. And I think probably in August we could do kind of a second quarter update or year-to-date update kind of through June 30th to see how our data looks. But I can work with Bob and Kim on that too, see if there's something we can do in the meantime to get some information out to you.
Cool. Then second thing, I do not want to bring up a sore topic, but I had two questions. My neighborhood has black and white new logo signs and color new logo signs. Do you know why there's a difference?
Yes. So you're talking the white on the green?
Like it has no color, but then the rest of them do. Is there a distinction between?
So we started implementing the street signs immediately in the first part of 2017. We had a retro reflectivity standard that we had to meet under federal law because under certain conditions they have to be able to reflect the light better. And so we just started implementing with the green and white logo. So ultimately, all of the street signs in the city will have the color logo because that is now the final version of the logo. So I would say we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit. And with the new sign printer that we acquired in January, we're able to print the color ones much easier with less waste. And so probably did spend a little money last year on that, but it'll be much better all in color.
Final question about that.
Sure.
You had mentioned last week that there was a significant cost to changing out the signs. Do you have a number on that? Like because it looks like it's going to take a while because it's time consuming. But you'd mentioned like that resources to do that. We're pulling people away from other things, or I don't know. I was just curious the impact on the city, the changing out.
So I don't want to say it's zero, but we had to do it anyway. So we had old logo signs that had to be replaced to this new federal standard. And so we might be doing some of them over again that we had done with the old logo a couple years ago, but it's pretty nominal because we had to do a lot of the changeover anyway. I can work with Rob and see if we've got an updated number. We are tracking direct costs related to the logo implementation, so I can follow up on that.
I caught my eye. Okay, thank you.
I'll go.
Really?
I have a couple. Okay. So when you were talking about the logo rollout, I had a quick question on the 104th Bridge. What's the timeline of changing out that?
Great question. I know it's something that Kim has looked at in talking with Doug Pullen in facilities. If I understand that correctly, what I understand from the conversation, you're talking the ones on the bridge themselves.
Like the big one.
So they're inset into the concrete.
Oh.
And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is exactly. So we're looking to see if we can add some kind of plate and leave it in place and then put a logo over the top. So it's kind of complex, and of course it requires CDOT approval for the engineering design to do that. One of the other things we're looking at, which is probably more of a longer term, is the monument signs. So the big slate signs, again, those are etched into those. So some of them are in disrepair at this point too. So it'll be all new material there, and that'd probably be a design discussion we would have with council at a future date. I don't think that's going to be budgeted in 2019, but because it's pretty substantial to do those.
Okay, thank you. Another question about this building, as the police officers put out, how we're going to reuse this. One thing I was curious about is I know that we have folks out by the rec center in the trailer, which is a little rough. I'm not sure if you've been in the trailer lately, but when I did my tour with Amanda, she took us back there, and I was just curious if there was any discussion about bringing those people into this building with that new space reassignment.
We have not talked about that. They would have new office space in the new recreation center, but yeah, that would be a couple years out. One work group we have talked about bringing over here is code enforcement. So they could work more closely with business licensing, the building division run by Safe Built, and of course they report up through Mr. Svoboda. So we didn't really identify space for those folks. And the one thing I would point out is that we're probably not planning on housing any offices down here. Because this will probably be used for storage. There could be council offices here, which are, you're here temporarily, if you will, things like that. But nothing that someone would be working down here 40 hours a week necessarily.
The only reason why I say that is because I know that when I did visit it, it was a little rough, and I kind of felt bad for them. And I don't know how my other council members feel, but I would be willing to give up the council chambers that are never used, because that's a nice office. So, for other people who actually.
The space upstairs?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have plans for that.
Oh, okay.
But we're looking at space for you down here.
Oh, okay.
So.
I'll put you in a trailer.
Yeah.
Not in the
trailer. Bring the people in the trailer. In the parking lot. Okay. Another question. So you talked about the water reassessment for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Will that also lead into a official water plan, or like, I guess, what the city wants to do with future water goals after that assessment's done?
Yeah, I mean, in general, it's going to be a supply and demand study. And so, obviously, we have existing supplies. We have things that are going through the court process right now, which is, as you know, takes years and years, but we can plan for that. The demand side would be looking at current growth, future growth of things like Carl's Farm, and then impact years, like if we have drought years, how does that impact our supply system? The other thing is that we're going to be coordinating, of course, with FRICO, Westminster, and Thornton because of the Stanley Lake operating agreement and the pipeline. And so there's going to be probably even some capital improvement discussion in that plan. We're just kind of at the infancy stage of how it's going to look. But at a minimum, supply and demand and growth projections.
Okay, thank you. A couple more, sorry guys. I did get a complaint that I put into the CRM system about the dog park water fixture.
Yes.
And so they said that we can't fix anything right now, and we'd look for it for budget purposes in 2019. I just wanted to raise that here to make sure that was definitely a concern of a constituent who called me. And I'd really like to at least have an idea of what a fix for the water pump would be and how much.
Okay. I'll follow with Ms. Peterson on that. I know she was working on that. So.
And then for the Save-A-Lot, it said that they might be opening by Q3. And I was curious about, I know that when Debbie originally talked about Save-A-Lot, we talked a lot about how they would kind of take community feedback into their integration plan. Is that happening? Because Q3 is quick. I mean, I'm just a little curious about how much feedback we're going to be able to provide with that Q3 opening date. So, and then finally, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I like that you included a lot more data, and so that made me happy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jim, I had a similar situation as Meredith. I had a constituent send me an email that I sent to you that I assume you put into the system. The system responded to the constituent, but not to the council person.
Right.
So, is there a way to tie that loop together so that...
So I think we can only report out to one email, but I'll double check. But at a minimum, we've got a new reporting, there's a checkbox in there where we can check council initiated. So even if you're referring a resident to the system and we put it in and then we're reporting back to the resident, we're checking that box manually so that when I do the Friday report, you'll get the whole council will get a report back on everything that was initiated by a council member. But let me follow up and see if there's a way to add multiple emails.
So if we enter it into the system, is there automatically a council initiated?
Yes, it should.
Because just of our login?
Yes. But I've got Susan double checking that. It's a very simple report she can run and double check.
Okay.
So.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jim. Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into communications.
No,
and
I wanted to.
I'm sorry?
Remember I added something?
Discussion.
I added something?
Oh,
Did you forget me?
you sure did.
I know. I almost wanted to
Because my
forget it
notes went.
because it's 9 o'clock.
That's what my notes went from here to here.
It's a private little joke up here. But anyway, I was asking, I've been thinking about the council evaluation committee, and for those that are listening, it's a committee that actually puts together the process of appraising our different employees, which would be the judge, the city manager, I'm looking at you, the attorney, and Joanna, the city clerk. And after the response we had a couple weeks ago, I started thinking about it. This is the first time really we've had a lot of interest in the committee. And we have a majority of the council now sitting on a committee. And I'm wondering if maybe we don't have that large committee, but having the whole council be part of the process. So I was kind of working through that in my mind. And so I was wondering if council would like to have a study session to actually go through the process, what we have to do. Maybe we don't even want to use the tool that we're using right now. I kind of did a little research on the different types of appraisals that we do, and we're actually in the modern group, because we do a 360, but there are other avenues. So I was just kind of wondering if council would like to have a study session so we could all talk about what we think we want to have, And actually, the appraisal process is going to start up again pretty soon. So the sooner we do that, the better off we'll be. So anyway, I just kind of opened it up to everybody.
Amen. I agree.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, it's great. Right. Thank you. So if we could schedule something for the entire council to talk about the process, so we know we can move forward with the entire council.
So we added some things to June 4th.
Right.
You want to go June?
Not June 4th, Jim.
Not June 4th.
This may be a long conversation. It could be a long conversation.
So June 18th, we have a couple simple things, I think. The Smart Commute Metro North Shared Bike Program, which I think is pretty simple. The Neighborhood Engagement Program, the Marketing Plan. And then we had city council goals on there, but we could always move that. That's not urgent. And we could put this on instead of council goals.
That'd be great if we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the idea and the interest that everybody has.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. Okay. That was easy. See?
Thanks, Mayor.
My apologies, because if I had overlooked you, we would have got this.
I know.
No, it was at the very respectful based on our last conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with Jordan, Communications.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So this last weekend, Food Truck Carnival was amazing. I took my two goddaughters out, Juliana and Autumn, and we rode the rides 3 or 4 times each ride, and again. And we ate at 3 food trucks. The lines were super long, which meant the food was really great. It was a really great event. Thank you to all the staff who put forth the effort. Saturday night, I attended the 100th anniversary of Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Colorado. It's a great organization to provide mentorship. After losing my sister 2 years ago, it's something I wanted to get involved in. To adopt a little sister, I tried to take on more than one, but they're only going to give me one for now. So we'll see how that goes. Day late, but happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers. It takes a village to raise us and to be here, so I'm so thankful to my grandmother for all her love and guidance. And finally, Saturday, Servicios de la Raza Gala. I know Councilmember Escobar attended with me last year, but I will be there Saturday night. Thank you.
All right. So the Food Truck Carnival was a blast, but I think it was really because of all the city people that put it on. That is a big event, and trying to plan even small events in my own world, I can't even imagine. So really, that was fantastic. I mean, it's just big, and I know how much work went into it. So, and she was right. Lots and lots of people, even though it was kind of gloomy, it didn't keep people away. Saturday, I went to the Station 63 grand reopening. And it was so amazing. And Scott McCabe gave my family and I our private tour, and it was really fun, and we got to see behind the scenes. The station's amazing. The whole thing, the event was beautiful, but it really, it's important that they have what they need, and so it was really good to see that. And then this is just two things. No. So I want to do a shout out to Mark Stevens with the Northglenn Maintenance and Operations. So when we were talking about mattresses, all of the fencing stuff in my own world was rattling around because, as you know, my fence blew down and it's not a special pickup, fencing materials. And I do not own a pickup truck. And I was very sad about the whole thing because I just couldn't stand looking at the piles of fencing material. But there's still 2 Saturdays left for the community and 2 Fridays left to take their stuff to maintenance and operations on Clog Court. And so my kids and I, we chopped it up really small. We loaded it in the back of my minivan. We drove it over there. And Mark was awesome and helped us take it out. And I guess he's worked with the city since 1980, he said. Nicest guy. So huge, huge appreciation for that. And then this is my shameless plug. You all received an email. So the Studio School is a Northglenn Elementary School. They're having their huge school play. It's called Willy Wonka Jr. I sent you an email. Unfortunately, it's not an event that we provide the tickets for you. You gotta go online and order some tickets. They're holding it this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Anybody can get tickets in the community if you want to check it out, but my son is playing Charlie Bucket, so I'm the star of the show. Yes, and so I will be the proud mom Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. However, the principal does a really great job of recognizing school district people and city officials. So if you're going to come, let me know, and she will recognize you at the crowd before it starts. So, but you have some of that information.
Please. And just to tag along with that, I've gone to several of the performances over there, and they do an awesome job. They really do. I just love the Studio School, and the principal is great over there. She really is. So, just a couple things for me. Food Carnival is awesome. It was a little cool, but it was a little more challenging for me because they asked me to serve beer. And the deal is, I don't know anything about beer. So I don't know the difference between a pale ale or a Pilsner, So it was a little challenging, but it was kind of fun anyway. So it was good. The one thing that I do want to mention, though, more on a serious note, we did lose a mayor from the city of Aurora, Steve Hogan. He passed away from cancer. He was ill just for a short amount of time. But he not only was mayor of one of the larger cities, but also a personal friend of mine. So it was very hard. He was the mayor for 7 years, and he was actually a council person for about 24 years. He was a state rep, and he was on, I think, the Northwest Parkway, if I remember correctly, or E470, one of the... E470. Yeah, one of the two, plus many, many other things that he has done. So I just wanted to mention that. I mean, condolences to the family. It's very sad.
I just have a couple of things. I too attended the food truck carnival, and I've always wanted to know what an Azteca was. As I watched this television program, that features a Venezuelan family. So when we saw the truck, the Venezuelan truck, I got introduced to the Aztecas. What a meal! That was just awesome. So I appreciate that diversity, that that people can experience something different, other than, not that there's anything wrong with hot dogs and hamburgers, but it's nice to see what other cultures are doing, and I really appreciated that. I also attended the dedication of Firehouse 63. Can't say any more than Meredith said it. Just amazing what they had, and then what they went through living outdoors, while they constructed it, and what they have now. And I can tell you, not ever being a fireman, I'm sure all of those firemen, first responders, are thankful that from what they had, what they went through, and what they got. They really appreciate that, I'm sure. And I want to take a moment of personal privilege and publicly recognize Council Member Jenny Wilford for her cooperative outreach within our ward. She has truly been a pleasure to work with. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, that was really sweet.
I know you can't top that.
You're so nice, thank you.
Why don't you say
That's right. We're feeling a little sad over here.
I know. Over there. I don't have many things. My family did attend the food truck carnival this weekend as well. Actually, my daughter probably would have yelled at me for weeks if I didn't take her on the Ferris wheel. So we were there. We had a great time. We rode the Ferris wheel a lot. In addition, I did attend the Northglenn Preschool Mommy Spa Day on Friday. It was amazing. The kids, you were personally given a spa by your child, which included a mani-pedi, as well as hair, refreshments, whatever, lots of buttons and pins and rollers. We had light refreshments of cucumber water and goldfish. So it was, I think the kids just loved it. I had to go home and I'm still trying to get the excessive amount of nail polish off of my cuticles, but it was just really great to see all the moms just having a good time with it, and it was fun. So thank you, Kelly and her team, for coming up with such a great idea. It was very sweet.
Did you take pictures?
I did.
I'm going to see those later. I have a couple of items. One, I'm a little choked up over here. Councilmember Askballer, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to serve with you, and thank you for taking me under your wing and teaching me everything you know. It means a lot. Okay, couple of things. One is we have scheduled our ward meetings for the rest of the year. So save your date. The next ward meeting will be June 28th at Hugh Danahay Park Pavilion. It's going to be the ice cream in the park, ice cream social that y'all do not want to miss. And we'll be meeting at 6:15 for a meet and greet. Then the meeting will start promptly at 6:30. We'll be talking about the results of some of the traffic calming studies, water conservation, and then giving some highlights and some things to look forward to and some of the summer rec programs. And then our final ward meeting for the year is tentatively scheduled for September 18th. And we'll have lots more detail about that to come. I'm personally really looking forward to that one. And then I also want to say thank you to staff for doing such an exceptional job on Food Truck Carnival. I can't imagine that it was a small thing to put on, and it was a ton of fun. I'm sad to report, however, that the Caterpillar roller coaster is not suitable for people over the height of 5'9". I feel like I still need to stretch, but my son got to ride on his very first roller coaster ride, so that was pretty special. The very last thing I wanted to talk about is I noticed on resolutions that authorize contracts that staff has started to indicate whether or not a Northglenn business has applied. And I wanted to say thank you for doing that. I appreciate that you're paying attention and acknowledging that that's something that's very important to council. And I would really love, I don't know if it's a discussion with council so much as it is an operational thing to take back and figure out, but I'd really love to figure out how we, as a city, can start encouraging our local businesses to apply and bid out some of these contracts, because I know we have a lot of local folks who could be picking up local jobs. So that's just something to think about for later, and that's all I got tonight. Thank you.
Lisa?
Nothing.
Jim?
Just one thing. I will be out, as I mentioned, at the ICSC conference with Debbie Sunday through Tuesday. So Mr. Svoboda will be acting city manager, and he'll be running the study session on Monday night, which are a couple simple items, zoning, and then the traffic calming update for Livingston and 112th. So just a couple items, and so he's volunteered to do that.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move into public invited to be heard, 3 minutes per speaker. Comments shall be related to an item previously addressed by council during this meeting. Anybody come forward? Okay, Tim, you had your chance. Seeing no one come, we are adjourned.
All right. We did all night. Good job.